This message is for Matheus Fernandes, this message is for Carlos Baleba, and this message is for Alex Scott. Manchester United are rebuilding their midfield this summer, and the reality of the situation is becoming impossible to ignore. One place has already been taken. Ederson is on the way. At least one more midfielder will arrive, and there is still a chance that a second follows. But once those positions are filled, the opportunity disappears. United are not planning another major midfield rebuild next year. They want to finish the job now, and that means every remaining target faces the same decision. Wait for their clubs to cooperate or take control of their own future, because the clock is ticking. And here's the question nobody is asking loudly enough. What happens if they wait too long? Welcome back, everyone. Today is not about a breaking headline or a last-minute update. This is about the bigger picture. It is about understanding where Manchester United's midfield strategy actually stands and why the next few weeks could determine the futures of several players across Europe. If you enjoy detailed transfer analysis, make sure you're subscribed, because this story is much bigger than a single signing. And trust me, the implications are enormous. Before we talk about individual targets, we need to understand the plan, because once you understand the plan, every transfer rumour suddenly makes a lot more sense. Last summer, United focused heavily on reshaping the attack. Significant investment went into creating a younger, more dynamic forward line. The objective was clear: build something sustainable, build something capable of growing together, build something that would not require major surgery every single transfer window. Now ask yourself this: what area of the squad needs that same treatment next? The answer is midfield. United know it. The coaching staff know it. The recruitment department know it. This is the area they believe requires long-term attention. Casemiro is approaching the end of his United chapter. Other options have not consistently provided the balance and control the team needs. So the club's intention is straightforward: reconstruct the midfield properly now and avoid repeating the process again in 12 months. That is why this summer feels different. This is not about finding temporary solutions. It is about laying foundations. Ederson is already part of that foundation. The deal is effectively complete, and he represents the first major piece of the puzzle. One place is gone. Another will almost certainly follow, perhaps even a third. But after that, the market changes. The focus shifts elsewhere, which brings us to a fascinating reality. For several midfielders linked with Old Trafford, this may genuinely be their best and last realistic opportunity. Surprised? You probably should be. Let's start with Elliot Anderson, because his situation affects everyone else. United admire him. In fact, many reports suggest he was one of the standout names on the original shortlist. But admiration alone does not complete transfers. The latest indications suggest Anderson's preference may lean elsewhere. Manchester City are heavily involved, and when a player develops a preferred destination, convincing him otherwise becomes incredibly difficult. Add to that the challenge of negotiating with Nottingham Forest, and the situation becomes even more complicated. Forest are not known for making life easy when valuable assets are involved. Any club attempting to sign Anderson understands that immediately. The expectation remains that he will attract serious interest throughout the window. But if his heart is set on another destination, United cannot spend months chasing a deal that may never happen. So what does that mean? It means attention shifts elsewhere. It means alternative targets suddenly move to the front of the queue. And it means Fernandes, Baleba and Scott become more important than ever. But which one is most likely to seize the opportunity? Let's begin with Matheus Fernandes. Of all the remaining names, he may be the most intriguing. Young, technically gifted, calm under pressure, already familiar with English football, and still years away from reaching his peak. On paper, he looks like exactly the kind of profile United want to build around. There is just one problem: the asking price. And it is a massive problem. His club reportedly value him at a figure that many potential buyers simply view as excessive. That creates a stalemate. The selling club sees a player with enormous potential. Interested clubs see a talented footballer whose market value sits considerably lower. Somewhere between those two positions is a realistic basic agreement. The question is how both sides get there. And here's where things become really interesting. Eventually, financial realities tend to influence transfer negotiations. Clubs can hold firm for a while. They can reject approaches. They can insist on premium valuations. But if serious offers arrive and alternatives remain limited, difficult conversations begin. That is when players often become the deciding factor. And Fernandes has leverage whether he chooses to use it or not. Remember, careers move quickly. Opportunities appear and disappear. If he truly views United as the destination he wants, there may come a point where he has to make that preference impossible to ignore. What happens if he does? The entire negotiation changes, not dramatically overnight, but enough to create momentum. Clubs can resist bids. They cannot easily resist a player determined to pursue a specific opportunity. Nobody is suggesting conflict or controversy. Nobody is talking about public confrontations. But there is a major difference between quietly waiting and clearly communicating your ambitions. That distinction matters. Now let's talk about Carlos Baleba, because his story may be the most emotional of the three. There were strong links before, there was serious interest before, and yet the move never happened. The reason was familiar: valuation. Brighton placed a premium price on one of their most promising midfielders, and United decided not to proceed under those conditions. So Baleba stayed. Another year passed, and now the same conversation has returned. What makes this situation so compelling is that the mutual admiration appears unchanged. United still appreciate his qualities. Baleba is still believed to be attracted by the possibility of moving to Old Trafford, yet the obstacle remains exactly where it was before: the fee. And that creates a genuinely fascinating dilemma, because if United sign somebody else first, where does that leave him? This is the uncomfortable truth. Midfield places are limited, recruitment cycles are limited, clubs do not endlessly revisit the same targets every summer. If another player arrives and successfully claims that role, Baleba could find himself watching the opportunity disappear entirely, not for a few months, potentially for years. That is why timing matters so much. And timing is everything in football, isn't it? There is another layer to the story as well. Connections already exist. Familiar faces, international teammates, players who understand the environment and can provide insight into life at the club. Those relationships naturally strengthen interest. They make a destination feel more real, more achievable, more personal. But relationships alone do not complete transfers. Action does. Brighton are not under significant pressure to sell. That is what makes Baleba's situation different from many others. They can afford patience, they can wait, they can reject offers, which means if movement is going to happen, pressure must come from somewhere else. The obvious question is whether the player is willing to take that step, because without that catalyst, negotiations may remain exactly where they are today. Then we arrive at Alex Scott. His case is slightly different, but the underlying message remains remarkably similar. Bournemouth are in a strong position. They have enjoyed impressive progress. They have exciting ambitions. They can offer competitive football and a stable environment for development. From the outside, staying put makes complete sense. So why is his situation still worth watching? Because elite opportunities do not wait forever. Reports suggest Bournemouth would be happy to reward Scott with an improved contract. From their perspective, that is entirely logical. Protect a valuable asset, provide long-term security, potentially include future mechanisms that benefit everyone involved. On paper, it sounds ideal, but there is a hidden question underneath all of it. What if United move on before that future arrives? That is the risk. A release clause 2 years from now means very little if the club that once wanted you no longer needs your position. Recruitment priorities evolve. Squad requirements change. Today's perfect target can become tomorrow's unnecessary luxury. That does not mean Scott should force a move. It simply means he must evaluate the moment carefully, because opportunities are often defined by timing rather than talent. There is actually a recent example that highlights this perfectly. When United pursued a key attacking target, one of the reasons negotiations progressed smoothly was the player's clarity. He knew where he wanted to go. The selling club understood it, the buying club understood it. The situation became easier because nobody was guessing. Everyone knew the destination. Isn't that often the decisive factor? That same blueprint exists for Fernandes. It exists for Baleba. It exists for Scott. No dramatic gestures, no unnecessary drama. Just a clear message delivered through the right channels at the right moment. Sometimes that alone is enough to accelerate a transfer. And that brings us to the central conclusion. United are working within a structured plan. Resources must be spread across multiple positions. The club cannot simply spend enormous sums on every target. Difficult choices are unavoidable. Certain names have become unrealistic. Others appear increasingly unlikely. As things stand, the strongest possibilities seem to revolve around a smaller group of candidates competing for very limited places. Fernandes remains firmly in the conversation. Baleba remains firmly in the conversation. Scott continues to be monitored. But conversations do not last forever. Decisions arrive, windows close, priorities shift. And once United believe the midfield rebuild is complete, attention will move elsewhere. That is why the coming weeks feel so significant. For Fernandes, the challenge is turning admiration into action. For Baleba, it is making sure a second chance does not disappear the way the first one did. For Scott, it is deciding whether patience represents wisdom or missed opportunity. Different circumstances, same underlying reality. The message from United's perspective could not be clearer. Places remain available today. They may not remain available tomorrow. If you want to be part of the next chapter at Old Trafford, this is the moment to make it happen. Because once the final pieces are in place, the door closes. And that leaves one final question. Which of these midfielders do you think ends up wearing a United shirt? Is player power still the biggest force in modern transfers, or do clubs ultimately control everything? Let me know your thoughts below. If you enjoyed this deeper breakdown, make sure to leave a like, subscribe for more transfer analysis, and I'll see you in the next one.